The crystalline spires of Nova Centauri's capital city pierced the lavender sky like ancient fingers reaching for the stars. Dr. Zora Blackwood adjusted her environmental suit's settings as she stepped off the transport, the familiar scent of mineral-rich air flooding her sensors. 12 years had passed since she'd left this colony world, yet the view still took her breath away. "Welcome back to Nova Centauri, Dr. Blackwood," the automated system chimed. "Please proceed to immigration for returning colonist processing." Zara smiled wryly at the returning colonist designation. She doubted many of the original human settlers would remember her family, let alone welcome them back. The Blackwoods had left under complicated circumstances. The immigration line moved quickly, mostly filled with trade representatives and corporate officials. Nova Centauri had grown significantly in her absence, becoming a crucial hub for human-Centaurian relations. As a xenoanthropologist specializing in Centaurian culture, Zara couldn't have picked a better time to return. "Purpose of visit?" the immigration officer asked, not looking up from his holoscreen. "Research grant from the Interstellar University Consortium, studying the evolution of human-Centaurian cultural integration over the past decade." The officer's eyes flicked to her face, then back to his screen. "Dr. Blackwood, there's a note on your file." Zara's heart skipped. "Is there a problem?" "No, but you have a local contact requesting immediate notification of your arrival. A Centaurian named Nixus." The name hit her like a physical force. Memories flooded back, iridescent scales shimmering in sunlight, shared laughter over contraband earth candies, whispered secrets in the colony's hydroponic gardens. "Nixus is still here," Zara whispered, more to herself than the officer. "Your contact is waiting in the Cultural Liaison Office, Section C." Zara's legs carried her through the spaceport automatically, her mind racing through possibilities. How had Nixus known she was coming? Why reach out after all these years? The Cultural Liaison Office was designed to bridge human and Centaurian architectural styles, with organic curves meeting geometric patterns. Standing by the window was a tall, elegant figure whose scales shifted through shades of blue and silver in the afternoon light. "You still favor the color of Earth's oceans when you're nervous," Zara said softly. Nixus turned, four-fingered hands clasping together in the traditional Centaurian greeting. But her eyes, all three of them, sparkled with very untraditional emotion. "And you still smell like those sweet things you used to share with me," Nixus responded, her translator adding harmonic undertones to her words. "Though now it's perfume rather than actual candy. You remember that?" "I remember everything, Zora Blackwood, including why you left." Zara tensed. "Nixus, my family had no choice." I know that now. But there's something you need to see." Nixus reached into a fold of her ceremonial robes and withdrew a small, wrapped object. "Do you recognize this?" In Nix's palm lay a piece of candy, its wrapper faded but still bearing the distinctive Earth-made logo. It was identical to the one Zora used to smuggle to school, sharing them with her curious Centaurian friend who had never tasted anything like it. "That's impossible," Zara breathed. "Those candies were discontinued 20 years ago." "How did you?" "I saved it. The last one you gave me, the day before you disappeared." Nixus's scales rippled with shades of deep purple, sadness. "I needed evidence." "Evidence of what?" "Of what really happened 12 years ago. Of why the humans suddenly turned against us. Of why your father—" Nixus trailed off, her scales now showing flecks of red, agitation or anger. "My father was accused of industrial espionage," Zora said carefully, "of stealing Centaurian biotechnology secrets." "Is that what they told you?" Nixus stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Your father discovered something, Zara. Something in these candies. Something that could have changed everything between our species. But someone didn't want that change." Zara's scientific mind raced with possibilities. Her father had been a biochemist, specializing in human-Centaurian dietary compatibility. She had always assumed his interest in sharing Earth candies with the Centaurian children had been purely cultural. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because it's happening again. But this time, we're ready. We've been waiting for you, Zora. All these years, we've been waiting for the human who gave candy to an alien." Outside the spaceport windows, Nova Centauri's 3 suns began their elaborate dance toward evening, casting triple shadows across the city. Somewhere in those shadows lay answers to questions Zora hadn't even known to ask. And beside her stood Nixis, her childhood friend turned mystery, holding a 12-year-old piece of candy like it was the key to everything. "Tell me everything," Zora said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "Start from the beginning." Nixis's scales shifted to a deep gold. Determination. "Not here. There are still those who would prefer the past stay buried. Come with me to the old district. There's someone else who's been waiting to see you." As they left the spaceport, Zora couldn't help but notice how other Centaurians reacted to Nixis, with a mixture of respect and what appeared to be fear. Her friend had changed in more ways than just appearance. What role did she play now in Centaurian society? And more importantly, what role had Zora unknowingly played in the events that drove her family from this world? The answers, she suspected, would be both sweeter and more bitter than any candy she had ever shared. The old district of Nova Centauri was a maze of narrow streets and hybrid architecture, where human prefab units had been modified with Centaurian bioorganic additions over decades of coexistence. Zora followed Nixis through winding alleys, noting how the evening crowd parted before them like water around a stone. "The division between our peoples has grown worse," Nixis explained, her scales shifting through concerned patterns of green and blue. "What started with your father's exile has become systematic distrust. The corporations that run the colony now keep us separated in almost every aspect of life." "But the immigration center seemed integrated," Zora observed. "A carefully maintained facade. They need to show the rest of the galaxy that Nova Centauri remains a model of human-Centaurian cooperation." Nixis paused at an intersection, her third eye scanning the rooftops. While in reality, they'd been slowly poisoning both societies against each other. They descended a spiral staircase that seemed to be made of living crystal, each step illuminating softly as they touched it. The air grew thick with the sweet organic smell that Zora associated with Centaurian residential areas. "Remember how you used to say this smell reminded you of your mother's garden?" Nixis asked. "You remember that too." "I remember everything about our friendship, Zora. It was unique. More than you knew." They stopped before what appeared to be a solid wall of shifting colors. Nixis pressed her hand against it, and the surface rippled like water, revealing the hidden entrance. Inside was a vast chamber filled with scientific equipment, both human and Centaurian in design. "Welcome to the synthesis," Nixis said. "We call ourselves that because we believe in what your father discovered, that humans and Centaurians are more compatible than anyone has been allowed to know." The chamber was occupied by a mix of humans and Centaurians, all working together with the easy familiarity of long association. At a central workstation stood an elderly human man with familiar gray eyes that widened at the sight of them. "Uncle Marcus," Zora gasped. Marcus Blackwood, her father's brother and fellow biochemist, looked exactly as she remembered him, right down to the careful way he removed his protective gloves before approaching. "Hello, little sweet tooth," he said, using her childhood nickname. "We've been waiting a long time for this reunion." "You disappeared 2 years after we left the colony," Zora said. "The family thought you were dead. That was necessary. After what happened to your father, I needed everyone to believe I was gone. It was the only way I could continue his work." Marcus led them to a holographic display showing complex molecular structures. "Your father discovered something remarkable, Zora. Those Earth candies you used to share with Nixis. They weren't just sweets. They contained compounds that temporarily enhanced empathic connections between humans and Centaurians." "That's impossible," Zora protested. They were just cheap, mass-produced candies. Not the ones in your father's special batches, Nixis interjected. He was using them to test his theory about chemical bridges between our species. Every time you shared those candies with me, we were part of an experiment we didn't understand. The implications hit Zora like a physical blow. Is that why I always felt like I could almost sense your emotions? Why we became so close so quickly? The compounds didn't create anything artificial, Marcus explained. They just enhanced natural compatibility between our species. Your father believed that humans and Centaurians had the potential for deep empathic bonds, something the corporations saw as a threat to their control. A sudden commotion at one of the workstations drew their attention. A young Centaurian researcher was calling for Marcus, her scales flashing urgent patterns of red and white. "They've done it," she announced as they hurried over. "The Corporation Alliance is implementing the separation protocol tomorrow. They're introducing new food additives to both human and Centaurian supplies, compounds designed to suppress cross-species empathy." Nixis's scales darkened to a stormy gray. "How long have we got?" "The first treated shipments arrive at dawn. Once people start consuming them, the subtle bonds between our species will begin to break down," Marcus finished. "Within weeks, the natural ability to empathize across species lines will be chemically suppressed. They're trying to make sure nothing like your friendship with Nixis ever happens again, Zora." Zora looked at Nixis, really looked at her. Beyond the alien features, beyond the shifting scales and third eye, she felt that old connection. Faint but present, like a whisper of music just at the edge of hearing. "The candy you kept," Zara said slowly. "It wasn't just for evidence, was it?" "It's the last pure sample we have of your father's formula," Nixis confirmed. "We've been trying to recreate it, but without his original research. Which is why we needed you," Marcus added. "Your father would have told you things, shared details about his work, even if you didn't realize their significance at the time." Zara closed her eyes, memories flooding back. Long evenings in her father's lab, watching him prepare special batches of candy. The careful way he documented each shared piece, noting how she and Nixis interacted afterward. His journals. "The notebooks," she whispered. "He kept encrypted notebooks. When we left, he made me memorize a sequence of numbers. Said it was a game, in case we ever came back." "Do you still remember it?" Marcus asked intently. "I used to recite it every night, hoping it would help me understand why we had to leave." Zara opened her eyes, looking at Nixis. "I never forgot." A distant alarm began to sound, its wailing cry echoing through the hidden chamber. One of the human researchers ran up to them, face tight with concern. "Security forces are sweeping the old district. Someone tipped them off about a possible resistance cell." "We need to move," Nixis said. "Now." "Wait," Zara caught her arm. "What aren't you telling me? What's my real role in all this?" Nixis's scales rippled with colors Zora had never seen before. Complex patterns that spoke of hope and fear and something deeper. "Your father's formula didn't just enable empathy between our species," Nixis said softly. "In some cases, in some special pairs like us, it laid the groundwork for something more, something permanent." "What do you mean? Why do you think you can still sense my emotions, even after all these years without the candy? Why do you think I knew exactly when you would return?" Nixis touched her forehead to Zara's in the intimate Centaurian gesture of trust. "We're bonded, Zara. Permanently. And you might be the key to helping others achieve the same connection. If we can stop the Corporation Alliance in time." The alarm grew louder as security forces drew closer to their hidden sanctuary. In that moment, Zara realized she faced the same choice her father had 12 years ago. Run from the truth, or stay and fight for a future where candy wasn't just a sweet memory, but a bridge between worlds. The evacuation of the synthesis laboratory was organized chaos, with humans and Centaurians working in seamless coordination born of long practice. As Zara helped pack critical research materials, she couldn't stop watching Nixis directing the effort, her scales flowing through command patterns that seemed to transcend the need for verbal communication. "The security forces are using thermal scanners," Marcus warned, checking the concealed monitoring system. "They're getting closer to detecting our heat signatures." "The tunnels," Nixis decided. "We'll split into 3 groups. Zara comes with me to the archive facility. The rest of you know your evacuation routes." Before they separated, Marcus pulled Zara aside. "Your father's formula wasn't the only thing they wanted to suppress," he whispered urgently. "The corporations discovered something else, something about human Centaurian children." "Human Centaurian?" Zara's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Our species aren't compatible for reproduction." "That's what everyone was meant to believe, but your father found evidence suggesting otherwise, under very specific conditions." A crash echoed from above, making them both jump. "Find his notebooks. Everything you need to know is there." They parted ways, Zara following Nixis into a bioluminescent tunnel that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. As they moved deeper into Nova Centauri's underground network, Zara felt a growing awareness of Nixis' emotional state. Anxiety mixed with determination, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. "The bond between us," Zara said as they navigated a complex intersection. "How long have you known about it?" "Since the day you left," Nixis replied, her third eye scanning their path ahead. "The pain of our separation, it wasn't normal. Most Centaurians can form empathic links with their own kind, but what I felt with you was different. Stronger. Your father knew it might happen." "Did he tell you?" "No, but he left messages. Hidden data in the chemical structure of each candy he gave us. The Corporation Alliance discovered them during their investigation. That's why they moved against him so quickly." They emerged into a vast chamber that took Zora's breath away. Towering shelves of crystalline data storage units stretched into darkness above them, each containing thousands of years of Centaurian history and science. "The true archive," Nixis explained. "Not the sanitized version they show to off-world visitors. Your father's research is hidden here, encoded into the crystal matrix itself." As they approached the central access point, Zara noticed something odd about the other Centaurian archivists. Their scale patterns seemed muted, almost mechanical in their shifts. "Something's wrong," she whispered to Nixis. "They're not moving naturally." "Chemical suppression," Nixis confirmed grimly. "It's already started. The Corporation Alliance must have begun introducing the compounds into the water supply." A sharp pain lanced through Zora's head, accompanied by a wave of foreign emotion. Fear, but not her own. She looked at Nixis and saw her friend's scales had gone almost completely still. "They're trying to break our bond," Nixis gasped. "The suppressants. They're stronger than we anticipated." Zora reached for her friend just as alarms began blaring throughout the archive. Red emergency lights cast everything in a bloody glow as security forces poured into the chamber from multiple entrances. "Step away from the alien," a mechanized voice commanded. "You are being influenced by illegal empathic manipulation." But Zara didn't move. Instead, she reached into her pocket and withdrew the ancient piece of candy Nixis had kept all these years. Without hesitation, she unwrapped it and broke it in half. "What are you doing?" Nixis whispered. "Testing a theory," Zara replied. "If my father hid data in the candy structure, maybe he also included a defense against what's happening now." She offered half to Nixis as security forces raised their weapons. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Zara saw everything with crystalline clarity. The slight tremor in the guards' hands as they aimed at an obviously bonded pair, the way the other archivists began to stir as if awakening from a trance, the complex patterns emerging in Nixis's scales that spoke of hope and trust and something that might have been love. They placed the candy pieces in their mouths simultaneously. The taste was familiar yet strange, earth sugar mixing with something that made Zora's nerve endings tingle. Then the world exploded into color and connection. The bond between them flared to full strength, burning away the chemical suppressants like fog in sunlight. But it didn't stop there. The energy rippled outward, touching each person in the chamber. Guards lowered their weapons, faces showing confusion then dawning recognition. Archivist scales burst into brilliant patterns of awakening. Through their enhanced connection, Zara suddenly understood what her father had discovered. The candy hadn't created the bond between her and Nixis. It had merely awakened something that existed naturally between their species, something the corporations had been desperately trying to suppress. The children, Nixis whispered in her mind. Show her. One of the crystal storage units descended from above, its faceted surface showing recorded images that made Zora's heart stop. There, in carefully preserved detail, were pictures of young children, some with human features and Centaurian scaling, others with iridescent human skin or extrasensory organs. Proof that their species weren't just compatible, they were meant to merge. This is why they exiled your father, Nixis said aloud. Not because he discovered our compatibility, but because he proved it was inevitable. Humans and Centaurians are evolutionary partners. Given time and connection, we naturally begin to adapt to each other. A new alarm sounded, different from the others. One of the guards, now free from chemical suppression, checked his communications unit. They're releasing the suppressant compound into the city's main ventilation system, he reported, horror evident in his voice. They're going to try to suppress the entire colony at once. Zora looked at the ancient candy wrapper still in her hand, then at her father's research data flowing across the crystal displays. Everything they needed was here: the formula, the activation codes, the distribution networks. But they would have to work fast. How long do we have? She asked. The compound reaches saturation in 3 hours, the guard replied. Nixis's scales shifted to a pattern Zara now recognized as fierce determination. Then we have 3 hours to wake up our world and show everyone the truth about what we can become together. Through their bond, Zara felt the absolute rightness of their mission. This was why she had returned to Nova Centauri. Not just to uncover the past, but to fight for a future where no one would need to hide their connections, or their children, ever again. Time moved like syrup in the crystalline archives as Zara and Nixis raced to decode her father's research. The ancient candy had done more than just strengthen their bond. It had unlocked memories Zora didn't even know she had, conversations with her father that suddenly made sense. The distribution network, she muttered, fingers flying over the crystal interface. He didn't just study the candy's effects. He built an entire emergency system into Nova Centauri's infrastructure. Through their enhanced connection, Nixis shared her own revelation. The crystalline spires. They're not just decorative or architectural. They're massive resonators. The guard who had helped them, now introducing himself as Commander Thex, coordinated with other awakened security forces to secure the archive. The Corporation Alliance is sending troops to every major gathering place. They're preparing for mass suppression. Let them come, Zara said, not looking up from her work. Dad didn't just leave us the formula for connection. He left us a way to share it with everyone. The crystal displays showed Nova Centauri's complex ventilation system, but overlaid with another network, one that had remained hidden for 12 years. The spires weren't just resonators. They were delivery systems. Your father, Nixis breathed, scales shimmering with admiration. He built a countermeasure into the city itself. Not just a countermeasure, Zara corrected. A choice. Look at this. The data showed 3 distinct chemical formulas. The first was the original candy compound, designed to gently awaken natural empathic connections. The second was a more refined version, capable of breaking through artificial suppression. But the third, it's an amplifier, Commander Thex realized, looking over their shoulders, designed to work with the city's spires to broadcast the effect across the entire colony. But it requires both human and Centaurian biological catalysts to activate, Nixis added, her third eye widening in understanding. Freely given. A literal merging of our species to save everyone. Zara felt a tremor run through their bond. You know what this means, don't you? To activate the system. We would have to be the catalysts. Nixis finished. Our bond is already the strongest in the colony. But Zara, the strain could kill us both. A distant explosion rocked the archive, sending crystalline dust floating through the air. Through their connection, Zara felt waves of fear and determination from the others in the chamber. The Corporation Alliance was getting closer. How long until the suppression compound reaches saturation? She asked. 2 hours, Commander Thex reported. Maybe less. Another explosion, closer this time. Through the archive's security feeds, they could see Corporation forces deploying what looked like massive aerosol dispersal units around the city's central ventilation hubs. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, Nixis observed grimly. They'd rather reveal their manipulation than lose control. Zara's hand found Nixis, their fingers intertwining naturally despite their different anatomies. Through their touch, memories flowed freely, shared candy in secret corners, whispered dreams of a future where their friendship wouldn't be seen as dangerous, the pain of separation, and the joy of reunion. Show me the children again, Zara requested softly. The crystal display shifted, revealing more images of human Centaurian hybrids. But now Zara saw what she'd missed before. These weren't just random examples. They were family groups. Multiple generations of natural adaptation between the species. The Corporation Alliance didn't just suppress knowledge of our compatibility, Commander Thex said, his voice heavy with emotion. They'd been hunting these families, forcing them into hiding. My sister, he paused, scales rippling with grief. She fell in love with a human. When their child was born showing signs of both species, they disappeared. I never knew if they survived. Nova Centauri's central spire pierced the violet sky like a crystalline needle, its surface reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Zara and Nixis moved through maintenance tunnels beneath the corporate plaza, their joined hands glowing brighter with each step. Behind them, Commander Thex's forces engaged Corporation security, providing the distraction they needed. The suppression compound is at 60% saturation, Nixis reported, her scales shifting through warning patterns. People on the outer edges of the colony are already showing signs of dampened empathy. Through their enhanced bond, Zara felt the truth of it. A creeping coldness at the edges of their shared awareness, like frost forming on a window. But where their hands touched, warmth and light continued to grow. The catalyst is almost ready, Zara observed, watching the glow spread up their arms. Dad's notes said we'd know when it was time by the resonance pattern. They emerged into the spire's base station, where crystalline control panels pulsed with hidden energy. But they weren't alone. A dozen corporate guards stood waiting, led by a familiar face that made Zora's blood run cold. They did, Nixis revealed. The synthesis has been protecting hybrid families for years. But if the Alliance succeeds with this mass suppression, even our hidden sanctuaries won't be safe. The compound doesn't just affect adults. It can alter the development of hybrid children, forcing them to express only one species' traits. The implications hit Zora like a physical blow. They weren't just fighting against social control. They were fighting for the right of their species to evolve together naturally. A new alert flashed across the crystal displays. Corporation forces had breached the outer archives. They had minutes at most. The Spire activation system, Zara said, turning to Nixis. It's in the central tower, isn't it? Right in the heart of Corporation Alliance territory. Nixis's scales shifted through patterns of concern and love. It's heavily guarded. Even if we could reach it. We can, Commander Thex interrupted. My security forces aren't the only ones who've been awakened. There are sympathizers throughout the Alliance ranks. People with hybrid family members, people who've suspected the truth. Once they see others breaking free from suppression, they'll help. Zara squeezed Nixis' hand, feeling their bond pulse with shared purpose. Then we give them something to see. We show everyone what real connection looks like. Through the archive's entrance, they could hear the approaching forces. But now, standing beside her lifelong friend, feeling the strength of their bond, and knowing the truth of what they could accomplish together. Zara wasn't afraid. "Your father designed the system to require both species working together," Nixis said softly. "A final proof that our future lies in cooperation, not separation." Zara smiled, remembering all the times they had shared candy as children, never knowing they were practicing for this moment. "Then let's go prove him right. One last time, we share something sweet. And this time, we share it with everyone." They moved toward the Archive's secret exit, their joined hands glowing faintly with the first signs of the biological catalyst taking effect. Behind them, Commander Thex organized the awakened guards into a defensive formation, buying them time to reach the central spire. The future of two species hung in the balance, waiting to see if a bond forged in childhood over shared sweets could grow strong enough to break the shells of separation and show everyone the truth, that the best futures are built on connection, not control. Nova Centauri's central spire pierced the violet sky like a crystalline needle, its surface reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Zara and Nixis moved through maintenance tunnels beneath the corporate plaza, their joined hands glowing brighter with each step. Behind them, Commander Thex's forces engaged corporation security, providing the distraction they needed. "The suppression compound is at 60% saturation," Nixis reported, her scales shifting through warning patterns. People on the outer edges of the colony are already showing signs of dampened empathy. Through their enhanced bond, Zara felt the truth of it. A creeping coldness at the edges of their shared awareness, like frost forming on a window. But where their hands touched, warmth and light continued to grow. "The catalyst is almost ready," Zara observed, watching the glow spread up their arms. "Dad's notes said we'd know when it was time by the resonance pattern." They emerged into the spire's base station, where crystalline control panels pulsed with hidden energy. But they weren't alone. A dozen corporate guards stood waiting, led by a familiar face that made Zara's blood run cold. "Director Voss," Nixis said flatly. The Corporation Alliance director smiled thinly. "Did you really think we wouldn't monitor the archive? That we wouldn't know exactly what your father left behind?" He turned to Zara. "Your dad was brilliant, I'll give him that. But he never understood the bigger picture." "You mean profits?" Zara challenged. "Control. Order," Voss corrected. "Do you know what happens when humans and Centaurians truly merge? When we allow the natural adaptation process to continue unchecked." He gestured, and a holographic display sprang to life, showing projections of future generations. "We become something else entirely. Neither human nor Centaurian. The end of both our species as we know them." "No," Nixis's scales blazed with intensity. "Not the end. The beginning. Evolution isn't loss, it's growth." The glow from their joined hands had reached their shoulders now, and Zara felt the catalyst reaching critical resonance. More importantly, she felt something else. Other bonds, weak but present, flickering to life throughout the spire. "Your own guards," she realized aloud. "They're bonded too, aren't they? Not as strongly as Nixis and me, but enough to feel the truth." Voss's smile faltered as his security team began to lower their weapons, their own hands starting to emit faint glows where they had touched their Centaurian counterparts. "This changes nothing," he snarled, drawing his own weapon. "The suppression compound will reach full saturation in 20 minutes. Whatever bonds exist will be severed. Order will be maintained." But Zara wasn't listening anymore. Through her connection with Nixis, she had accessed the spire's crystalline matrix, feeling the vast network her father had built. It wasn't just a broadcasting system. It was a transformation engine, designed to amplify and share the very thing the Corporation Alliance feared most: natural evolution through connection. "Remember the candy?" she whispered to Nixis. "How we always shared it. How it always tasted better together." Nixis's scales rippled with joy and understanding. The sweetness of trust. Together, they'd pressed their joined hands against the central crystal. Light exploded outward, racing up the spire in spiraling patterns. The catalyst reaction reached completion, transforming their bond into pure energy that resonated with the city's hidden network. Voss fired, but his shot dissolved in the wave of energy emanating from the crystal. Throughout Nova Centauri, every spire began to glow with the same light. The suppression compound in the air was transformed. Its molecular structure shifted to become a conductor for connection rather than division. Through their shared consciousness, now expanded to encompass the entire colony, Zara and Nixis felt everything. They felt humans and Centaurians remembering their natural abilities to connect. They felt hidden hybrid families emerging from sanctuaries, no longer afraid. They felt the moment when Director Voss himself was touched by the wave of empathic awakening, his carefully maintained walls crumbling as he experienced true connection for the first time. "My son," he whispered, falling to his knees. "I have a hybrid son. I sent him away to protect him, to protect my position. What have I done?" The transformation rippled outward from the central spire, touching every corner of the colony. Where the Corporation Alliance had tried to spread suppression, they instead spread awakening. Every crystal in the city, from the largest spire to the smallest data storage unit, resonated with the same message. Connection is evolution, and evolution is natural. In the days that followed, Nova Centauri transformed. The rigid barriers between species dissolved as people remembered and strengthened their natural bonds. Hidden hybrid communities rejoined society, their children no longer forced to suppress half of their heritage. The Corporation Alliance's control crumbled in the face of undeniable truth that humanity and Centaurians were always meant to grow together. 1 month later, Zara and Nixis stood in the rebuilt archive, surrounded by new crystal records documenting the growing numbers of natural bonds and hybrid families. Their own connection had permanently altered both of them. Zara's skin now held a subtle iridescence, while Nixis had developed more human-like emotional expressions. "Your father would be proud," Nixis said, her scales shimmering with contentment. "He knew this day would come. That's why he left us the key in the simplest thing imaginable. Candy shared between friends." Zara smiled, touching the small crystal pendant she now wore. The reformed remains of that last piece of candy they had shared in the archive. He knew that some things are universal. The desire to connect, to share something sweet with someone you care about. Speaking of sweet, Nixis's third eye twinkled with mischief. "Have you heard? The new human Centaurian confectionery opens today. They say their candies naturally enhance existing bonds. Want to share some?" Zara asked, falling easily into their childhood pattern. "I heard these ones change flavor based on emotional resonance." As they left the archive, walking hand in glowing hand through streets where humans and Centaurians mingled freely, Zara reflected on how it all began, with a simple act of sharing candy with someone different. In the end, that's all evolution really was. The courage to reach out, to connect, to share something sweet with another being and trust that what you become together will be better than what you were apart. Above them, Nova Centauri's spires pulsed gently with crystalline light, broadcasting not